To the press and public. The meeting is being broadcast live and a recording of the meeting will be made available as soon as possible after the meeting is concluded. We welcome the use of the Welsh language at meetings, but have no requests for people to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in Welsh, in English only, sorry. Can members refrain from using the chat function, instead use the raised hand icon to indicate whether you want to speak. Please remember to keep your microphones muted, that includes me, and when you are not talking, please do not interrupt discussions unless you're notified of your intention to speak and you've been invited to. Moving on to the agenda. Agenda item 1, welcome apologies. And who's doing the who have we got on the apologies front today? Is it Geraint?
It's Geraint, Chair, but all...
Hello, Geraint. Hello, are you there, Geraint?
Well, yeah,
all members are here, Chair.
There's no apologies. There's no apologies, Chair. And just in case you haven't noticed, Councillor Seaborn has now joined the meeting.
I know she's popped up there in the canal view. Thank you. Welcome. And declarations of interest. Could you go through declarations of interest with members? Please, Rebecca.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Chair. I don't anticipate that there are any declarations of interest for you members, but if you think there might be anything through the course of your discussions, just raise it for us and we'll make a note of those. Thank you.
Right. Next item is minutes. Have you all got access to your minutes? I'm sure you've all read them. I certainly have. They're both there in Welsh and English. Any points that what you want to raise, or should I take it and pass them? Anybody got any points at all? A deafening silence. I take it you've all read. Can somebody move and second, please?
I move those, Chair.
I move, Chair.
Thank you.
Second.
So that's Janet. Janet moves and Rose seconds. Thank you very much indeed, Rebecca.
Chair, before we go on, could we remind everyone that Councillor Hawler has now joined us as a new chair for consideration for the officers as well, please?
You certainly can. That was reflected at yesterday's council meeting. Welcome, Councillor Hawler, and I hope you find this an interesting and rewarding experience. We certainly do, and I look forward to your contribution, which you normally do make, in my experience. That's enough of that. Thank you very much indeed, and thanks for bringing that up, Janet. I'm just not going to prolong this any more than that. So agenda item 4, action sheet. Rebecca, can we remind ourselves of what we need to look at on that one, please? I'm sure members have read that one.
Thank you, Chair. So, members, there are a number of actions that were arising from the last meeting. I won't go through them individually because there is quite a bit of information contained within it, but you will see that all the actions have been completed. So, unless you have any questions, I don't have anything further to add on any of those. Thank you.
Any members have any questions or observations on that one, please?
No, thank you.
Right, thank you. Then, therefore, we've much to do. It says on my script here, and I have to get myself back into it again. Lock screens are wonderful, aren't they? Keep me out of things most of the time. Item number 5 on our agenda, WED PSB draft. Well, it's got being here. Well-being. Thank you, Rebecca. It keeps me awake. This plan 2023-28. Before we commence discussions, I would like to introduce the officers. I've got a list of them here, but I'm sure they know who they are. Could you introduce yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, please?
Shall I start?
Yes, please, Lyndon, you better.
Morning, members. Lyndon Purdy. I'm the Head of Public Services Support Unit and the Partnership Lead to the Gwent PSB. Before I ask my other colleagues in, Chair, if you'd like me to do a whistle-stop overview for Councillor Hall, who's just joined this committee, I'm quite happy to do so once my colleagues have introduced.
Could we just introduce your colleagues and just do it that way round? Would that be okay, just so he knows who they are?
That's fine, Chair.
Yeah, so your colleagues, I got Kate and Stephen, I think is the two I've got there, unless there's anybody else on there as well.
Kate looks very still there, so I'm not sure if she's frozen, Chair. So I'll go first. My name is Stephen Honeywell, for those who don't know me.
Yeah.
I'm the acting Partnership Policy and Equalities Manager currently in the PSSU.
That's great. Kate, have we got you back? Yes, she's moving now. Hello, Kate.
Okay. I thought I was moving before.
Yeah.
Now you're frozen again.
Well, when we get Kate back, Kate Williams, not what your title. Kate, are you back again?
Kate Williams, Group Manager within the Public Service.
Right,
No
brilliant.
problem.
No, right, Lyndon, do your bit, and then it's over to Stephen to do his bit in the meeting for today. Go on, Lyndon. You always good introduction on this.
Councillor Hall has got his hand up a second. Chair, if you want to.
Yeah, because I was going to ask if Lyndon could do what he's just going to do, so I'll take.
Yeah, no, I've asked him to. I'm just doing a chair thing and just knowing who's the person that.
Thank you.
I just turned it round the other way. Lyndon, can you do that for us, please, if you would?
I'll do my best, Chair, and I'm sure if I miss anything out, Stephen, Kate will come back.
Yeah, Stephen's next on the agenda anyway.
Yeah, just in terms of where we are to this point, Councillor Hall, we've been discussing, and I'm going to take you back a few years. Each local authority in Gwent had its own individual public services board, and that public services board was overseen by the scrutiny committee, and that's always been the chairs of committee here. Over the last 2 years, or 3 years, or possibly 5 when it first got incepted, we were, because the Public Services Board look at the partnership arena, and the partnership arena in its widest possible sense. So you have statutory members of the PSB, and the statutory members of the PSB are the 5 local authorities, the Health Board, Natural Resources Wales, and the Fire and Rescue Service. Now, on top of the board membership, you have then statutory invitees, which are Welsh Government, the Police Crime Commissioner, Probation Services, and so on and so forth. So that those Public Services Board have been meeting for years, and the Public Services Board was a reiteration of the Local Services Board, which got established in 2014. So this sort of partnership process has been around for quite a number of years, and our Torfaen Local Wellbeing Plan, which I know all you members have seen and contributed to when I brought it to council. This committee has been overseeing how we've discharged that up to May 2023, at which time then a new regional plan will come into being. Now, the regional plan coming into being was all the local authorities and statutory members of the PSB agreed that they would look in the widest possible sense at the key priorities that impact us on a regional basis. So the Regional Public Services Board now will be looking at those impacts that Gwent as a whole have in common. Now, you'd recall from council yesterday that as part of this process, as well as regional, Torfaen's done a wellbeing assessment. Kate, Stephen, Rachel O'Shaughnessy, and many others were involved in pulling that extensive document together that gives a highlight of what's important to Torfaen. Now, those wellbeing assessments were all put together. So you had the 5 wellbeing assessments that created the priorities for the Gwent wellbeing plan, the regional plan, the plan to which now in future scrutiny, Councillor Seaborn and Councillor Williams will be sat on that committee looking at the regional activities. However, the wellbeing assessment will also highlight those local issues that are Torfaen specific, Newport specific, Blaenau Gwent specific, and as a consequence of that, our local delivery group will continue to meet and not only discharge the regional priorities, but will also be looking to establish the local priorities upon which this type of scrutiny would also be having an oversight of. Because we are so different across Gwent, we'll have some key priorities, but we're not all the same. We're very different. We're rural, we're urban, we're city, we're valley. So it's very much a a different picture. So in terms of where this report is coming to now, it's been to scrutiny on several occasions in the past in terms of what has come out of the 5 wellbeing assessments across Gwent that's now created the 3 overarching key priorities that's being put forward now as the Gwent PSB's work for the next 5 years. And the priorities are written within the report. You've seen them before, and if members want to have just to be reminded what they are, I'm quite happy to do that. So as part of not only developing the priorities now as we go forward as a regional public services board, which this agenda item is highlighted to you today, as well as identifying what those priorities are, we put into the report the steps that we are likely to be wanting to be taken going forward. And I'm sure there's other comments, and Stephen will come in on that, and I don't want to steal his thunder at the moment in terms of where we are. So the point of the scrutiny today really was looking at the 3 priorities are decided. So we're not asking you to make a comment on what those 3 priorities are. They are there. You are statutory consultees within law. So the purpose of this scrutiny today is to ensure that you as the elected members and the members allocated to be on this scrutiny committee have the opportunity to feed into the consultation process. And you would have already received my email, members, a couple of weeks ago, which pointed all Torfaen members to the link in order to provide their individual consultations within the Public Services Board as individual members. But this is for us today to just pick up some comments from you. I'm conscious that I might be stepping on Stephen's toes here now, so I'm being a little bit careful on my wording. But that's pretty much a whistle-stop tour, Councillor Hall, of where other members on this scrutiny committee would be well aware of the actions and the steps we've taken so far. Is that okay, Chair?
Take my own advice and turn the microphone. Yes, that's brilliant. Thank you, Lyndon. As usual, you're succinct and to the point. I noticed, Councillor Evans, you got your hand up. Is that there for any reason? You just put it there?
Yeah, it's only that Linda's stated the fire service is a public service representative, and I have to declare an interest because I sit on the fire authority.
Thank you very much indeed. The other thing I was going to ask you, Lyndon, the obviously collective community councils are in there some as well, aren't they?
Not on the regional board, Chair.
Only locally. I didn't know that. That's an interesting question there.
It becomes this is a public services board for the whole of Gwent. Yeah, so no, it stayed within the statutory consultees and the statutory membership.
So the community councils and the voluntary sector don't get a thing in there, do they?
The voluntary sector's on the Public Services Board, Chair. The community councils aren't, because if you consider how many community councils there are across the whole of Gwent, it would be.
No, I take your point, but yeah. They will ask that question. I know perfectly well they will. The
community councils are perfectly welcome to join our local delivery group, Chair. But if they do join that group, I do expect them to do some work in that group as well.
Yeah, that is a question. Obviously, some of us on here serve in that direction, and the big problem, and it's one that's solved in the voluntary sector, is how they get representation. Because the problem they got, it's probably worse than the borough councils. I think it's about 130 community councillors and so many councils in each authority. If you're looking at the Greater Gwent, it's a phenomenal number of representation in there. But how you get that representation distributed, bear in mind it's bad enough with borough councillors. How you get that in and out is a problem. I only raise it because it's a bigger problem, but they're as is democracy, they're like the moan about it as well.
We have Gavo and TVA on the board, Chair. So,
but as per community councils, the representation, there's obviously one voice and various county organisations, I presume, is how you would work that one.
Gavo and TVA are on the Public Services Regional Board, Chair. Community councillors will be sitting on the local boards.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very stock answer. So, okay, I won't pursue that any further, but I'm sure you have that in consideration. Go over to Stephen now, who's the report writer, and you can do your bit on that as well. Oh, sorry, Rose.
Rose is involved.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wanting to clarify how we actually feed back to our family councils, and whether or not we feed back to our separate committees that we chair as well. So I just wanted to how we get two-way conversations going.
Is that a question for me, Councillor?
Lyndon, I would say it was. You've just said it on the as you're the conduit for all of this. That's a good word, isn't
it? The local delivery groups, which will be set up to not only discharge the regional priorities, but also to identify and then discharge what our local ones are. That will be reported into the local scrutiny in the same way as it is now, Councillor Seaborn, but that's entirely a decision for you as members how you wish that to be discharged. You may decide that topics that are relevant to that should go to different scrutiny committees rather than as is this committee now. But in my report yesterday, I perhaps thought the members would need some time to consider how they wanted to address that. And I thought that might be more suitable to come out of the way in which you want to manage it as a membership, as part of the annual general meeting process, where allocations are made then to scrutiny committees and the setting up of those.
Councillor Haller, you got a hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Lyndon for his informative start to this meeting for me. As I say, it's a new meeting for me. And thank you for the heads up on what you've just said. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I thank Lyndon as well, because Lyndon is always very careful.
Very informative.
Very careful to make sure we know what we know on this, and he always does that. Stephen, I think we better get over to you so you can get your bit in and we'll get on with this meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Lyndon, for a comprehensive understanding of the kind of background to all this, really. I hopefully won't duplicate that too much, but just wanted to give a bit of introduction really around what was sort of stated in the report. So the purpose of today's session and the accompanying report is to provide the Public Services Board Overview and Scrutiny Committee with this consultation draft of the Gwent Public Services Board's Wellbeing Plan for 2023 to 2028 for your consideration and comment, as been said. So this committee, as the relevant local authority overview and scrutiny committee, are a statutory consultee for the Wellbeing Plan under Section 43 of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act of 2015. The Gwent Public Services Board has developed the draft Wellbeing Plan following the production of an assessment of local wellbeing, which we just mentioned. There's a huge amount of data for the entire region was included that, and then the localised assessments for Blenavon, Pontypool and Cwmbran, as well as being informed by a lot of public and stakeholder consultation. The assessment has obviously informed the development of this draft plan then, and it's been produced collaboratively by officers from across the partnership and approved by the PSB. And the result of this sort of process is the consultation draft that you have before you. We're currently consulting with the public on a 12-week consultation period, as well as other stakeholders, staff, statutory consultees, regarding the content of the plan, to take views and comments to help develop the final plan. The final draft will be produced over the coming months and will take into account the consultation response. The final version will require formal approval through each of the statutory members of the PSB prior to publication by the 5th of May of this coming year, 2023. In terms of the content, the draft wellbeing plan is framed around 3 proposed high-level wellbeing objectives, and these will be underpinned by work across the region to embed 8 Marmot principles, which are designed to reduce the inequity that exists between populations. And we see that evidenced across a range of determinants of wellbeing. The term Marmot refers to the work of Professor Sir Michael Marmot, Director of the Institute of Health Equity at University College London. and the 8 Marmot principles are set out in the consultation draft of the Wellbeing Plan, which I'm sure you've seen. As I'm sure you're aware, and as Lyndon referred to, this draft Wellbeing Plan is the first wellbeing draft of this Regional Public Services Board. It sets out the proposed key priority areas for partnership work over the 5 years in the form of those 3 wellbeing objectives. These 3 proposed objectives are that we want to create a fair and equitable Gwent for all. We want to create a Gwent that has friendly, safe and confident communities. And we want to create a Gwent where the natural environment is protected and enhanced. In deciding on these objectives, the Gwent PSB responded to all the data and analysis and the assessment of wellbeing. Within the draft plan are the proposed steps to be taken to meet the objectives over the 5-year term of the plan. I think it's worth adding that at this point in time, these steps, and as the legislation identifies them as steps, they remain high level. The consultation period itself, including these scrutiny sessions, are an opportunity to get a range of views on how we take these steps. There will be a local delivery group, as Lyndon referred to, each of the 5 geographical areas tasked with developing and delivering the local action that will contribute to the shared vision of meeting the plan's objectives. More detailed nuances around what will be done on the local level are therefore yet to be explored in full, so any ideas generated through the scrutiny sessions and the wider consultation effort have potential to be really useful as the work streams are developed in due course. So today we're keen to hear any thoughts from you about this draft of the plan. The wider consultation is seeking views on whether it will improve wellbeing in Gwent, whether people feel anything is missing, thoughts on what success will look like, and any ideas on what we could potentially measure to ensure we are making progress against the objectives. These may be things you've considered, and no doubt there'll be other thoughts today. In terms of the suggested scrutiny activity detailed in the report, or requested in the report, the PSB ONS committee is invited to consider the steps identified within the plan to address the 3 high-level objectives, and in particular to consider, are the steps appropriate, are any steps missing, and obviously to provide additional comment or information that will add value to the draft plan. I hope that Lyndon, Kate or myself are able to clarify any aspects you have questions about, and that's about it from me by way of introduction. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That was a good brief introduction, and we've got 13 questions here. Obviously, what we read was very comprehensive and fairly succinct, the stuff we do look at normally. And those members who not got questions, if you want to interject with some fairly succinct questions, because we've only got a few hours here, I don't want to be here all day, to be quite frank. We need to get some good scrutiny out of this that the PSB can get to grips with, as it were. I've got number 1 question here, and it's because of the nature of the high-level stuff, it's fairly composite, so good listening on everybody's part. Some of these questions are fairly long, in other words. Okay, the new county plan for the council will be conscious of both the proposed wellbeing objectives and the opportunity to introduce the Marmot principles within its planning processes. That's part of it. Can you expand on how you ensure the wellbeing plan will have an alignment with the county plan? Have you got that one? Do you want me to go back over it again? It's basically what you said to start with, Stephen. You know, the Marmot. I will say the county plan of the council is constant. I can never say that word. Constant with the proposed wellbeing objectives and the opportunity to introduce the Marmot principles within the planning processes. Can you expand on how you ensure the wellbeing plan will have an alignment with the county plan? We were all quite pleased at that. That seemed to work that way. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, you okay if I step in there?
Yes, please. Okay, yeah. Please. Yes, please do.
I saw Steve Kate's hand was up. So
oh no, please comment. You obviously know this quite well.
Thanks, Councillor Ashley. So as Steve alluded to earlier, so Professor Sir Michael Marmot is a professor in the Institute of Health Equity and has conducted research over 40 years on health inequalities. Yeah. The team of his approached the Gwent Public Service Board in October last year and the PSB were already considering their own available indicators of health inequalities, and they were to be incorporated in the Gwent Wellbeing Assessment process. So the indicator sets considered and discussed by the Gwent Public Service Board included the Marmot indicators. So that prompted a discussion really about becoming a kind of a Marmot region and how we're going to kind of embed this and move that forward. So there's been lots of discussions around how we align this so that we're not looking at 9 wellbeing objectives, 3 overarching goals, 8 Marmot principles. You know, there's so many things in there. So how are we going to kind of incorporate that within our world? But actually, I think when you look at the Marmot principles and our own objectives, they're very succinctly aligned. So we're already looking at these things. We're already looking at, you know, giving every child the best start in life, creating fair employment. Lots of those things are already in our objectives. So they align really well. And that wasn't just by luck, you know, that is something that has been developed really. So one of the things that we wanted to do is try to make the links with the wellbeing objectives, link them to Marmot and how that is going to work in reality without creating any duplication or another set of measures. So what the drive is then is to try and create the local authority to see everything through a bit more of a Marmot lens rather than a separate issue, so that we're always thinking of how we can reduce the health inequalities within our communities through our wellbeing objectives, so that they align and we're making sure that we're doing the same thing rather than duplicating and creating more work for ourselves, but actually that we're doing this through an overarching way rather than trying to keep it separate and that really. So I've got some kind of information. I wonder if it'd be helpful if I could share my screen, or can share it after. Just really, if we look at our wellbeing objectives, if you just align, bear with me a second, if I just create in a sec. So one of the things that we're making sure that we can kind of align is we've got our wellbeing objectives, and you can see how they actually correlate with the Marmot principles. So, you know, increasing education attainment, helping young people and adults. Well, actually that links perfectly with the Marmot principle, giving every child the best start in life, creating fair employment. So it's embedded in that, and I think it's more of a cultural thing of how we are going to support driving the Marmot approach through our existing wellbeing objectives. So there's lots, you know, around this that we're trying to do, that we're not really trying to create any additional work, and just trying to keep that really as succinct as possible so that everyone's on the same page really.
Any members, have you got any questions on this? Because I certainly got a few. I think the basis of the question was how does it tie into the county plan? Because if you listen to what they were proposing yesterday, because we have scrutinised the county plan. When the new chief executive put up what he wanted in there, the 9 principles in there, I mean, they do seem to align quite well. And you are right when you say Marmot or some principle. I mean, some of us have got, I dread to say this, 40 years or longer in various social things, and Professor Marmot seems probably quite good. I mean, I go back to the days of the Black Report, remember that? Poverty. And you can come up with all sorts of things, you know, various academics and various public things. I'm sure Rose can remember a lot of these as well. I'm not saying how, but the principles of how you measure and reflect things and collect data. Public policy is littered with this stuff, and we've all got various things. I mean, Black is one I can remember because I studied it when I did my degree. But you know, it's good to have something you remember. But I always thought that the Welsh Government's well-being of future generations is one of these markers we put up there for everybody's life. And a further question is going to an agency that's in the business of doing this. I'm not going to put this in there now. So I understand why you like that one, because it's quite definite and relatively simple to remember in the context of what you're doing. You can go across all agencies, because your problem, you've got the health authority, the police authority, the fire authority, and they've all got different markers. And I go back to about 1980 on this, where getting co-terminology, I think that's the right word, across agencies so they can all talk the same language is the biggest single problem you've got, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think the chief executive and the leadership team and chief officers and that have been really keen to show that the county plan, remains agile. It's there to incorporate new initiatives. There's going to be new challenges and opportunities that are going to kind of arrive through the lifespan of the plan. And I think adopting the Marmot principles, addressing wellbeing and inequality to align with the 9 wellbeing objectives will be embedded within the plan, so they marry up with each other and that, really, so that it's not going to be anything separate. And I think because it's still quite, even though Professor Sir Michael Marmot has been talking about this and trying to drive this action for over 40 years, this has only recently sort of come to the Public Service Board and has come into us. So I think it's to us now to try and drive that through, to have discussions at scrutiny. We've had discussions at leadership. There'll be a discussion at the Policy Development Forum of how this is going to embed this and how we're going to kind of make sure that we align that. But it is, it's in our county plan, and going forward, I think there'll be more robust development within service plans and individual team plans.
Thank you. Any questions from members? No, good. Janet, can you do question number 2, please?
Yes, certainly. On page 25, paragraph 3.4 of the report, are you confident that we have fully considered and taken into account the Future Generations report?
In a nutshell, yes. Councillor Jones, we've been operating within this framework for some considerable time, and in fact in developing this we've submitted the draft wellbeing plan to the Future Generations Commissioner's Office and received their comments, and have incorporated those comments into the process that we're doing. They're quite excited actually, because we're the first, not only is Torfaen a member of the first regional public service board that takes in, that has over 650,000 people in its population, but we're the first one that's tried to produce a regional report as well that incorporates the Marmot principles. So it's something that the Future Generations Commission and Welsh Government have a very keen interest in at the moment, in having oversight of that. And we're confident that we've hit all the markers that we necessarily need to do for anything to do with the legislative process.
Done. Thank you.
Any more questions on that at all? No. Okay, Rose, you're number 3.
Yeah, I think you answered the first part of the question, but I'll repeat it anyway. So Gwent PSB has agreed to become a Marmot region. What does it entail to become a Marmot region? And what difference will it make to Gwent, and what benefits will it bring?
So,
yeah,
happy to come back in there. I think it's like a lot of initiatives, actually, to stand up and say, this is what we believe in, this is what Torfaen, this is what Gwent want to do. One of the things about becoming a Marmot region for Gwent, it will be the first one in Wales. That's really good for Gwent, isn't it, to get on board. We've got a partner around the table now with the health equity team, and the health boards are fully on board and supporting this, because they see the drive and the change that if all partners work together to tackle the social determinants of health and the wider impacts, we can make those changes. We can enhance people's quality of life. People will live longer, they'll live in better health, and that depends on if they've got the right environment to to, take children to the park, increase their well-being, lead healthy lives. It all kind of ties up together. So I think it's a real drive then to kind of improve the health and well-being of the citizens of Gwent, and really standing up and say we're doing this because rather than just saying it's just what we need to do, actually it will help and improve the lives of the citizens of Gwent. And I think Torfaen is really looking at this now to just say what we need to do as a local authority then is to really push this and to get the word out and to try and look at the evidence and the data, but that sits behind a lot of the reasons within our community of why people aren't living in good health, why there is more crime in one area, why there isn't social cohesion in other areas. All of that, I think, can be done under the scope of the Marmot principles, then linking with our wellbeing objectives to really drive that forward.
And are we looking at baselines for everything at the moment so that we can evaluate our improvements?
So there are, one of the things that the Marmot team, they have specific Marmot indicators. So I've been working with the internal teams, Auntie Wilson and that, and looking at our wellbeing indicators, the national wellbeing indicators, how do Marmot link in with that so that we're not creating a whole new set of indicators, but using our existing data and our existing evidence and that to drive the overarching change, really. So yeah, there'll be a baseline of evidence and indicators that we'll be looking at, but we'll be linking those really succinctly with our existing indicators and how we do that. And it will just be the wider partnerships of the public service boards that will need to influence those as well.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. That's really interesting. My question sort of refocuses that slightly, because what we then looked at was the three objectives. Are the three objectives too large in scope to achieve focused improvements? It follows on from that, really, because we did look at that little lot there and think, blimey, it's a lot of it.
Yeah, if I could jump in, sorry, I don't want to hog it with you, but no, please I attended the majority of the stakeholder events, and that was a key thing that came up to just say, who wouldn't disagree with those overarching statements, because they're really broad, and I think that's the discussion that we want to have with members in that. Are they too broad? Are we trying to capture too many things within those overarching statements then? So actually, I know you've asked me the question, but kind of putting it back a bit really to just say, is that what you're thinking? Are you thinking that they're too broad and they need to be a bit more focused? So I'd welcome your thoughts on that.
Well, let's put it this way. They're the old council aims, aren't they, when you look at it? Greener, cleaner and all that. They take me right back to that. But then you need to drill down on where you want to go. Climate change, the well-being does boil down to environment, anti-poverty measures, and better life. We can't escape them, unfortunately. It's just then you've got to identify the problem, and then what are you going to do about it? It always comes back to that, unfortunately. It's what we've got the resources to do. I mean, we can't escape the nature emergency and global climate change. So we can't escape the fact that we've got a problem with life in the area. We just had that Guardian report, the report that was in the Guardian the other day. I mentioned that. We've got, along with northwest of England, we've got that problem about what we do about poverty issues. We're back again. I mentioned the Black Report. We're back at that again. Unfortunately, we've got to do something about it, and then education and all the rest of it. So we've still got those problems, but when we're doing something about it, because the Wellbeing Future Generations Act was actually really good. It focused those issues. So this Marmot principle, I think, you've got something there. How you deal with it, it's pragmatic in that sense.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I think with those overarching statements as well, is there are steps that sit under that of how this is going to be achieved, and actions that need to be done under that, really. So it does try to catch all, but I think they're the three main areas that just keep coming through, aren't they, time and time again? Thanks.
I mean, I'm hoping that the regional setup will give a way forward for all of us, because although Steve would say some of us are sat in other places, that we might have different environments, i.e. rural, the valleys and the urban areas, because some parts of this county are one on the other. The problems are the overarching, what you do about poverty, what you do about the nature emergency, global climate change, but we still need to address the problem. We can't just ignore them. I don't know. I hear what do officers of the PSB feel about it? How you get forward from what you measure the data, look at the problem. How do you go forward to practical measures? Because councillors are always interested in that one. We can have all the meetings, but where do we go forward to the action? Obviously, PSB and the agencies involved, you've all got the day job, which you keep telling us on that one. Lyndon, come on.
Yeah, if I can, as my colleague Stephen alluded to, as part of the introduction of the HA, within those 3 key priorities, there's proposed steps in order to address some of those issues you've just raised, Chair, in terms of what are the PSB likely to identify in terms of being able to enact that, and that will then be brought into the project plan that the PSB. This is a long-term 5-year plan.
It is,
there will be some, as the phrase goes, low-hanging fruit that you can address in the shorter term rather than the longer term. Those 3 objectives, they've been worked on by a group of officers that have considered what steps that we need to put into place. So it's as members, it would be really helpful if you think those steps are either appropriate, inappropriate, they need enhancing, perhaps there's too many, perhaps it's not enough. It's that sort of feedback we'd really appreciate as part of this scrutiny process. That then feeds a developing action plan going forward, Councillor Ashley, that will then go in front of the scrutiny members of the Public Service Board that Councillor Seaborn and Councillor Williams will be representing Torfaen on. So we've tried to do a wraparound, I suppose, governance framework on this in terms of once the priorities are identified, so that's done and dusted. The steps going forward aren't done and dusted, and that's part of this scrutiny process and alludes to the question that you've raised.
Well, you've talked about low-hanging fruit. Have you identified anything in this wide process? I'm not asking you to name it here, obviously, but you did when you did the local one. You certainly picked off things you thought you could have a go at with reasonable amount of alacrity, and you've done that. So obviously, on a regional basis, there's got to be stuff that with certain amount of you can look at. And obviously members, I'm hoping that our representative members will certainly see that one because they've got a certain amount of experience. But this process, I think, and I don't think we can get round those questions you've asked there, to be honest. They've come there for a reason.
Yes, and there's a vast amount of experience on the committee today, really, in terms of not only scrutiny but in wide activities that we've undertaken over the last few years. We've reported in scrutiny the performance of the Torfaen Local Service Board. I suppose that the identification of the low-hanging fruit, Councillor Ashley, will be once the plan is pulled together and the steps taken forward in terms of addressing those. There is significant officer experience involved in this as well, to be able to progress and take forward a proposal to the PSB for approval that will have to go through a further scrutiny process. And we've got very experienced member in Councillor Seaborn sat on that scrutiny committee. Councillor Williams is new to the scrutiny process, but Councillor Williams has extensive experience in local government, particularly around the partnership arena, that he's able to bring to the fore as part of that committee. Was probably and of course he's part of was a member of the Regional Partnership Board support team, so has very good knowledge and connectivity. But the low-hanging fruit will need to be identified once we go through the appropriate stages, Councillor Ashley, if any fruit is there to be picked, to be frank.
I think you'll find it. And some of us like growing trees and developing fruit. So the analogies there are quite lovely, aren't they? By the way, you've got 2 questions now by Councillor Seaborn. If nobody else is going to put their hands up, I like the link there. There are Councillor Seaborn, on with it, and ask Lyndon and company. You got a couple of questions there. I'm sure we'll address this problem.
Thank you, Chair. I think you officers will judge by our questions that we found the report quite comprehensive and very hard to find some pertinent questions to the report. But hopefully we've covered a couple. And the one that I've got at the moment is how will objectives be prioritised across the region and locally? So how will we prioritise what is good for Monmouthshire might not be good for Blaenau Gwent, or the other way around, or so how are we going to prioritise those issues that different areas in the region might have, and how are we going to prioritise Torfaen's issues within it?
Are you okay if I pick this one up first, and I'm sure people will come in.
Yes, please, Lyndon, go on. You're doing well there.
The 3 overarching priorities, they're going to be undertaken at the Gwent level. They're also coterminous to the priorities as identified in each of the local wellbeing assessments. So, in terms of the 3 key areas there, activity will be identified in those that can be tackled on a regional basis. The local development, the local delivery group, which the deputy leader is chair of, will not only be undertaking the activities of addressing those regional priorities with activities. Those activities, by the way, those 3 areas are already identified within our county plan structure, and they will formulate part of our, so we do things once and feed up into rather than do things twice. But you may recall at the start of the meeting, we did make a commitment at council when I first took this report process through, that because of the local priorities, they will also need to be taken forward as part of the local partnership priorities for Torfaen, which be different to the local priorities for Blaenau Gwent, for Monmouthshire, for Caerphilly and for Newport, because we're so different. Now, although we've got that wellbeing assessment, we've had to concentrate on the regional work. We've got a further piece of work to do, which Sarah related to this committee at the last meeting we had, in terms of the timing of what activity we do next, which is identifying, we've got the 3 regional priorities that we're working towards. So what other local priorities are particularly pertinent to Torfaen that we need to keep an oversight of? Now, that piece of work still needs to be done, and that will be undertaken once the Gwent Wellbeing Plan has been put into place, so as we don't end up doing things twice or duplicating. So in essence, what we'll be looking to do is local will feed into regional, rather than we do local, then we got to go away and do regional, then we got to go away and do something else, because your time and officer time is under pressure and very much limited. So there's going to be a balance between the local delivery group tackling the regional and working collectively with the PSB to identify what actions that we can all take that feeds into that regional plan. And then locally, we'll have our Torfaen local partnership plan, something I've tried to pen it as going forward, to which the scrutiny committee that I alluded to earlier, as part of the council's oversight of local partnerships, will continue to happen. And as I said earlier to members, that could either be in a similar structure that you've got now, i.e. the chairs of the various scrutiny committees, or it might be something that you'd want to take to a specific committee if this committee didn't feel it was of benefit to stay as a scrutiny committee on local issues. But that's how we envisage it, and that's how every partnership lead across Gwent sees this being enacted. So we all collectively contribute to the regional, but we've also got to be mindful to what the local is. The local priorities then will go through a scrutiny process again, because you know better than anyone being elected members what the local priorities are for people in Torfaen. We then agree a plan. We then put a performance framework around that, and we'll report that in the same way as we do now locally. I hope that gives the committee some reassurance.
Yeah, I think you've gone some way in answering my second question as well, but I will repeat it. So the data and performance measures are still in development, but has consideration been given to whether the data produced on a regional PSB basis would be replicated at a local level?
I think the one will feed into the other, and the other will feed into the other, Councillor Seaborn. The one thing we are very mindful of, and this committee have reminded me of this several times in the past, you don't want to see duplication.
No.
We don't want to see duplication, so we are doing all that we can to align performance structures and activities that were undertaken. So as if we do an activity once, it may feed into several different performance fields, and that way then it makes the best use of our time, of your time, but more importantly, it's not waste in time and effort we should be spending on the communities in Torfaen.
Thank you, Lyndon. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That very useful set of questions, and I'm sure we'll note that when we come to conclude on this, because there's a lot you put in there, Lyndon. Right, my final question.
Steve Evans has got his hand up, Chair.
Steve, what did you some questions there? Good.
On that particular question, I want to know, are we going to monitor the performance to make sure we get it actually right? Because if the performance is right, that's great. But if it's not right, and we're going to replicate it to the other the local
Excellent
one,
question.
How quick is it to turn it round? And how do we realise we won't make the same mistake going further on over the time period?
Are you okay if I come back to that, Chair?
Yes, please. Steve's got some. I think he's seen this in action. So this is some, it's good insight on this.
The performance information, once the wellbeing plan is in place, the performance framework is in place, then reporting on activity will go to the Public Services Board, and scrutiny of performance will be done at PSB scrutiny for whether we're on track or with us. But also we'll have a performance framework locally for our own activities. So in essence, we do agree with you, Councillor Evans, is if things are going off kilter, they need to be addressed. The Public Services Board are the statutory body that own the performance, so they'll be holding all of us to account. And Councillor Seaborn and Councillor Williams, who will be representing us on a regional scrutiny, will be holding the PSB to account. So if performance is going off kilter, that is the structure to which questions can be asked, and it's up to the executive on the Public Service Board who will be scrutinised by the PSB, not necessarily the officers, but locally it will be the officers that will be scrutinised.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, the other part of that is, with the data, how are we going to collaborate that data to make sure it's efficient and the right responses to the regional partnership?
It has to work that way, Councillor Evans, otherwise we won't get any way forward. So we've all got specific data and information leads. I mean, the important thing is, Kate and others alluded to it earlier, the three regional priorities, they are necessarily wide. It's the actions that contribute into those priorities will then be for us as officers to ensure that the information we provide into those priorities are consistent. So in other words, the data can be relied upon. I got no doubt in the future that not only will the Future Generations Commissioner have a view of how this board is performing, Welsh Government will, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's the National Audit Office as well. That's some
I was more on the lines of our co-partners, to make sure that we're all aligned, to make sure all the data is aligned. That was the point I'm trying to make.
Our local delivery group is a reflection of the regional group, so the core membership of this. So, for instance, your area of expertise is Fire and Rescue Service. So we got Fire and Rescue Service on the regional board, and they'll also be expected to attend at the local board level. Now, I can't instruct those officers at the local board for obvious reasons.
Guy, can you tell us when you're back on? So I could see him scrabbling around down there.
So sorry about that, everybody. Yeah, it just the Teams link dropped out in the chamber, but we are back now. If you can carry on, please. Thanks for that.
Yeah, okay, I'll remember to go back. Yeah, the partners obviously, as I said earlier, all have different objectives, having to suit, like we did with the objectives. In terms of how governance and the measures that is obviously problems, because it goes back years to the different systems they all have and how they measure success, etc. It's what Steve was on about. And if it doesn't work, how we across all the partners.
Those are the types of discussions, Councillor Ashley, that as part of the reasons why the PSB has adopted the Marmot principles alongside it. So as you do get some consistency of approach and commitment. There's obviously work to be done post, once we've gone through this formal consultation that ends at the end of the month, and there's further work to do to produce the draft wellbeing plan, which will go to regional scrutiny. Yeah. Just to put a commitment behind that. The actions that sit behind it, there is a fairly grown-up conversation to be had here, because those three key priorities, the Public Services Board executive, so i.e. the strategic directors and the chief executives of those organisations, have signed up to. Yeah. So there is an expectation that everybody contributes to those objectives in the widest sense, and the board will then hold us to account on the discharge of those activities when we go forward. There's nothing more important than relationships and networking in whatever job we do throughout any organisation, and there are good networks, there are good working relationships, there are frameworks that we need to develop, and there will be, just to reinforce it, expectations that all partners contribute to. So it is new. This is new. I've got no doubt that the scrutiny around this process will be intense, as it should be, because it's going to be a regional board. The hope is that if we're all working collectively together, so consider climate change, the various actions that will come out of climate change. It's not just a local authority response, it's a fire and rescue service response, it's a probation response, it's an RSL response, it's a voluntary sector response, it's certainly a health response. So, those activities will all contribute towards tackling those key priorities that will come from the performance framework.
Thank you, Lyndon. I mean, yeah, we recognise the opportunity. I'm going to start sounding like SWOT analysis here, but or a pest, which is probably more appropriate to what we're doing. but the constraints and the opportunities are there, and I love the fact that you guys are excited by it. That's not a council office. It is actually, because you're in the business of making the blessed thing work. And I'm in the business of making the thing work because climate change is a big one, and so is the anti-poverty thing. They all are. But we've got that business, we're looking at those three things you're there about, and they're all serious. The big I mean, obviously, I would say climate change, and that is really, really serious, because without this earth to go round on, we ain't going anywhere, in my opinion. But that's something I can hazard, and I'm probably sure most of the people watching would probably agree with you. It's a bit worrying, to say the least. But end of the day, you've got to make this work, and the regional partnerships probably are the best place to do it, in my opinion, as well. So I'm with you all the way, and I'm sure most members are in one way or another. And going up and down the line seems to make a lot of sense. Anyway, I'm not going to belay this any more than that, because I think we've done that one to death a bit. My question is the other bit of the jigsaw, and it came up, and I've restrained myself making any...
Sorry, Chair, to interrupt. I think Steve had his hand up. He wanted to come in there.
Steve, sorry, I can't see Steve's hand up. Oh, that's Steve. Sorry, wrong Steve.
That's okay. It's not too much. I was just going to offer some sort of additional sort of reassurance on that point of the level of buy-in, really, from the partnership. As Kate mentioned earlier, we've been working closely with the Marmot Region Planning Group and ensuring that our kind of thinking is all aligned, really. Professor Marmot actually came to Gwent on the 21st of October. We held an event in Newport that the vast majority of the board members, from across the organisations, including some of our local representation from our local registered social landlords as well, who were represented on the board by Ty Callon. So, that kind of communication channel was there amongst all the partners. Our Chief Executive, Stephen Vickers, spoke at the event. Our leader was there as well. But there was an exceptionally good turnout from members of the board and from other invited senior staff from their organisations at that event. So, Professor Marmot's team were really, really pleased with that level of commitment to taking this forward. And we're also seeing a bit of evidence. So the Director of Public Health, Dr. Sarah Aiken, who's a PSB member, is producing or about to sort of publish a report which is aligned with those 8 Marmot principles. So I think that kind of strategic thinking and the recognition that we all need to be on the same page is definitely there.
Well, put your hand down. The next question is, does the wellbeing plan, obviously, and Marmot, align with partner plans with agencies such as Public Health Wales? Or you've just answered the question, haven't you? Which is what was worrying, because, I mean, as I said, you read the articles from The Guardian and other places about health inequality in Wales, and Public Health Wales is the one that's got all the data on that. Well, you just answered that question. Can you make some more comments on that one?
Yeah, I mean, referring back to sort of the regarding the sort of performance management, as Kate sort of said as well, there's work going into that currently, but we've also had various conversations with the staff from the Wellbeing and Future Generations Commissioner's Office about this process, and their support has been really useful with that. They sort of advised that really we should be waiting until this consultation period kind of closes and we get kind of closure on what the steps, what is actually going to be in the final report, so that before we start, putting the horse before the cart, so to speak, and finalising, the action. So, as Lyndon's talked about earlier, there's an awful lot of work to do over the, it's not going to be this consultation period will close. There'll be some quick analysis. We'll get the plan published, but the work's only really just beginning in terms of developing the thinking around all the kind of regional level work and the sort of nuanced local work that Lyndon talked about earlier. So yeah, it's very much, it is a 5-year plan, and it will be a substantial process. And obviously these are big organisations involved in the work. So, that all needs to filter down into various, talked about our county plan being aligned, and all the other organisations sort of need to sort of take similar kind of look at their processes and filter that down into their team plans and actions.
Right, thank you. Any members, any more questions on that one before I give the next question that's got Rose's name on it? Great.
Now, and I think my question's been answered to a greater extent, but I will ask it again. Are all partners on board with the draft plan and the scoping of the objectives? And are they all engaged in the consultation process? Can I just expand on that? Because a question came up on what if we need others to buy into something that is in our plan and in our, I'm thinking power suppliers or things like that. I would have thought as a regional level, we would have a better pull on the strings rather than a local level. How do you feel about that?
Well, to just answer the first question in terms of all partners being consulted, yes, they have. We've also done a massive public engagement process through this as well that Stephen and colleagues have been extensively involved in. So in terms of meeting the consultation process and the partners bought into it, yes, that's all been reported into the PSB itself. So all partners are a part. We've got statutory partners, we've got statutory invitees. All of those partners have bought into the process. The second part of the question comes to see, well, if we take the analogy of our electric companies bought into this, no, they aren't part. They are part of the, which is another part of my portfolio, which is around emergency management and civil contingencies. So, they are brought into the Gwent Local Resilience Forum activity there, which is different to the Public Services Board.
I just wondered if it was a priority for the Gwent area on the PSB for, say, Welsh Water to do different or a communal job or something, would that benefit having a PSB? Yeah, but it's probably a different department or a different committee. Yeah.
Yes, it would be a different committee at that process. But just to give, I suppose, assurance to you as members, I don't think we could have consulted any further. To be frank.
Lyndon, can I ask a question about that resilience forum? Because I didn't forget about it, but with the current emergency with regard to poverty, etc., does in your relationship with the people like the gas, electricity, and all that, does that come into this? Because obviously we've got an anti-poverty agenda going here as well as part of this. Is there any cross-fertilisation on that agenda?
No, Councillor Ashley, it isn't. We deal with civil contingents and emergencies.
Just that. So you see where I'm coming from, don't you? Yeah.
It's rather a large agenda as it is.
Oh, I know that.
At that level, Councillor Ashley, the Civil Contingencies legislation, the 2004 Act, is very specific in the role and duties of the Local Resilience Forum.
No, I get that. We're talking floods,
Yeah, I think that was my point, Chair. Are we able to buy into other larger people, companies?
I think there's more correlation with the Regional Partnership Board rather than the other areas which we've been. Now that we've got we've got a very strong executive. They're already having conversations with the chairs of the other various partnership board, and the Regional Partnership Board is more aligned to the work of the PSB than any other board.
Yeah, you're on more, Chair. No, I can see civil contingencies is the old civil defence role. Yes, I get that. That was just.
It's all the fun stuff when the white stuff comes down, Councillor Ashley. That's what it is.
Yeah, no, I get that one. Don't worry. No, so thank you for that. Next one, if you finish with that, Rose and everybody else, I can't see any yellow hands up. Janet's next, I think.
Thank you, Chair. What would happen if, for example, one of the partners did not want to take the same approach to achieving an objective? For example, the road safety, not everyone adopting the 20 miles speed limit, which I'm led to believe Monmouth are considering, because they have, from what report I've heard, they probably not going to adopt it. And how will that affect the whole response on partnership?
The overarching objectives within the wellbeing plan will have a set of. This is the best way I think I can answer this, Councillor Jones. If it doesn't, please come back to you. But the whole point of the Gwent Public Services Board is to do things in partnership. So, and the structure put in place is that those people on the Public Services Board, the executives there and their organisations, have identified these 3 priorities to which they're all going to work towards. There are statutory members of the board that cannot leave, and there are statutory invitees to the board that can choose to leave, such as the police service and so on. If they choose to leave, they choose to leave. You know, there isn't. It doesn't make the committee structure any less stable. The 3 overarching priorities now will have work plans that come off the back of that will need to be agreed by the PSB following scrutiny overview. So there shouldn't be a situation where you arise with one partner whether doesn't want to work towards a specific objective that their representative on the board has agreed to. That's probably the best way I can describe that sort of analogy. I don't know whether it's as complete enough or you have a supplementary.
No, it just concerns that obviously one of the aims is we have a safer community, and how it would have an overall effect. Obviously, you've explained as best you can. I suppose we just have to watch this space and see that the plans do go ahead and every child in every area is involved in a safe environment. Thanks, Lyndon.
Janet, again, you got the next question as well.
Oh, sorry, Jay, give me 2 minutes. I've lost my connection. Just a minute.
I'm having the same problem at the moment. No, you're the next question.
I didn't think so. I thought that was Rose.
Just let me check a moment. I'm sorry, it is.
It's Councillor Seaborn, Councillor Ashley.
We're on question 10.
I'm running off.
Yeah.
Sorry, it is Rose. It is you. Sorry.
Thank you. My question 10, and we've only got 13. You'll be pleased to know.
Yeah.
Is how will we evaluate the plan, and how will we know that we're achieving against our objectives?
Sorry, that is that.
So
I think we have answered that question.
We have, yes.
If you're happy to leave it there.
Yeah, no problem.
Then it's you, Janet. You've got 2 quick questions there by the look of it. I don't want to prolong this any longer. I can help.
No. Have we received any feedback on the consultation period so far? And how will, my second part has already been answered. How are we going to ensure there's no duplication within the partnership? You've already answered that. So mainly is, have we had any feedback regarding the consultations to date?
Stephen, can I bring you in on that?
We've been using an online consultation using the Bang the Table platform that Torfaen Council use for all our resident survey and various consultation activities. I've been working closely with Louise and with Louise Day and Katie Jenkins around that. So we do have access to the sort of, we can pull reports on consultation activity and so on and so forth as we wish. We're kind of using that as a way of seeing who's responded and to try and do a little bit more of a targeted push to certain sections of our community. So a lot of our efforts have been around engaging with, seldom heard voices, certain protected characteristics and things like that. So we produced that survey in a way that would allow us to see who's responding and where they're responding from. So we can see that we've had a good response rate from people in Torfaen proportionally compared to the other sort of 5 areas, which is really good. We've also then got people who are working in their own particular geographical area to go out and speak with groups and run focus groups and things. So I've been out to met with a New Dads group that our sports development team work with. We've also worked with an LGBTQ youth group and did a focus group session with them over in Ashley House. So we've got little bits and pieces of that. But in terms of sort of the board analysis, obviously the consultation will close on the 31st of December. And we have 2 colleagues working with our team in Caerphilly to do a lot of that analysis right at the start of January to obviously inform any redrafting ahead of the the final version going through all the kind of approval processes of council and so on.
Thank you, Stephen. I do also to thank you for some of your officers coming out and speaking to the forums and coming in general to the resource centres. So that was much appreciated by everybody. So thank you very much for that.
It was actually very useful going up to the Blenavon Resource Centre. I went where there was a market up there, and I spoke to lots of people. Quite a few filled it in there, and then it was a really good response. So I'm glad we were able to do that.
Yeah, and I was involved in the Over 50s forum, and they were more than happy to take part, and they welcome having face-to-face comments and analysis as well. So once again, thank you very much, and thanks.
We will feedback to those groups as well.
Rose, you got the last formal question.
No, Chair, Janet has got another one, but Kate wants to come in.
Okay.
It was only really just to add a little bit to what Steve was saying with regards to the stakeholder events that were held in the 5 local authorities. As you can imagine, the issues that were brought up in Blaenau Gwent were very different to the issues that were brought up in Monmouthshire. So there is an afternoon where those that were helping to support and facilitate the event were meeting December the 22nd to try and collate all of those kind of responses, because as you can see, it's very different for different areas, isn't it? So there will be a big session to try and look at all the analysis and that for those specific stakeholder events. As I said, they were held in the 5 local authorities, and there's an online event tomorrow. So that includes a lot of local authority staff, health boards, police, fire service, everyone in there, which it's so vast. I think, it's going to be quite a big task to try and pull all of those sort of responses together. But as I said, Steve's looking at the community side of it. There's lots of different elements to make sure that we collate that so that it's representative of all the 5 local authorities. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That sounds really, really interesting and encouraging. I presume you capture all that as well as a dialogue, I believe is the right word. Thank you.
Sorry, can I just add one thing? And obviously, talking to yourselves as well today, this will form part of that overall consultation. This is why we're meeting you, that it's so important to speak to elected members to go through to scrutiny. I know Lyndon has shared it for all elected members, but your views and your thoughts today is going to form a real rich picture for us to go forward to, inform the plan and help the consultation. So thank you.
Do you use any sort of novel ways of, do you film people, do you vox pop, that sort of thing? Just a question.
No, I don't think any of the stakeholder events have been filmed or recorded or anything like that, but we've just taken our own notes. There's been note takers, facilitators and everything like that at all the events then that compile all the information later. But to my knowledge, there hasn't been anything video.
Our scrutiny clerks get grown a bit when I ask that question, but sometimes a good vid or a sound recording is worth 1,000 words, and it's one of the lessons we get taught by the voluntary sector, who are actually really, really good at this. And you might want to go and nick them. Cumbrand Life is worth having a conversation with. Ben Black is actually brilliant.
Oh, okay. Okay, will do. Thank you.
We use him a lot down in community council. It's just worth having a conversation with him.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah.
Not today or tomorrow. He's following my son.
Rose is engaged in other activities, of which her various voluntary activities are very good at. I won't say a word, will I, Rose? No, it's done annually. Rose, you have the last formal questions.
I think Janet has question 12, Chair. I don't think that's been asked yet.
Go on. I haven't asked it.
She was declining.
Right.
Because it's already been answered about duplication.
This is why I moved you onto it, Rose.
Sorry, Jen, I missed that point.
Yes, I was awake,
I think you can gather we didn't find many gaps in the report, but have we learned any lessons from previous plans? are plans from other partnerships. We've had lots of partnerships over the years.
Yes.
And do you think there are any gaps in the wellbeing plan? That's a good one. That's passed it back, isn't it?
I'll pick that hospital pass up now. I think we'll always learn lessons from different processes we go through. This is the first time we've done this on a regional footprint, and I have to be frank with members that unless we had such good quality staff across Gwent that want to work collectively and collegiately, we wouldn't be anywhere near this spot. And you'd expect me to say this, but our Torfaen staff have been fantastic developing this as well. But it's all about trying to work on a regional basis. We have picked up the lessons that we learned through the original iteration of the different wellbeing plans that we all took through various different forums and activities. And regionally, we share that intelligence and information. And we all collectively agreed that we could have done better at that point. And that's what we tried to do this time. We've tried to go out far wider on the basis and trying to get the information comes in. It doesn't float everybody's boat, this sort of activity, but we've widely, I suppose, broadcasted the fact that we were looking for comments and other elements to come into this, and lots of people have responded positively. Are there things that missing? They probably are, but we don't know that yet. It's a little bit along with as we are with our county plan. I mean, the chief executive has made it very clear that this is the county plan, but if things change, the plan will change. And similarly, if we sort of get that issue at the Gwent level and things come in left of centre, which as members, you know, frequently happens on activity, we'll need to adapt. I suppose from a Torfaen perspective, I am confident that we've gone as far as we can with this. I'm confident that the plan reflects the priorities, and I'm confident that we'll be able to identify what local priorities, which will be more pertinent to residents and, of course, you as elected members in Torfaen when that's developed going forward. I mean, the simple factor around all of this is that we've got a regional plan that no one else in Wales has got. We've deliberately kept it to 3 objectives rather than 33 objectives in order to try to get things done. Because as you know, as members, the more actions and priorities you have in any sort of plan limits the ability of people to be able to respond, because the jam gets spread a little bit too thinly. And working regionally, we hope that collective jam will be able to produce a better product in terms of how we respond regionally. I think I've covered that question, but I'm not quite sure if there's any supplementaries members may have, Chair.
Rose, do you want to come back? I can't hear you, Rose. You were
no, thank you. No, thank you, Chair. I think we covered it right.
Steve Evans?
Yeah, I only want to lead on that because I know previously there has been issues with consultees and partners in attendance to some of the meetings. So how are we going to deal with that in a long-term approach? Because that will have an effect on the coordination with the data and the performance of each region.
You're absolutely spot on there, Councillor Evans. I mean, the PSB Executive Board, that's for the executives on that board to take up any issues they have with any individual partner. You know, we are talking the more senior leaders in Gwent sitting on that board. So, for instance, politically here, we have the deputy leader, the leader. If the leader can't attend, the deputy leader attends. The chief executive attends the PSB here. If the chief executive doesn't attend, then the deputy chief executive attends. So there should be no reason why at that executive board there shouldn't be representation. Locally, or if we do have issues in relation to membership there, then the deputy leader will be writing to those organisations expressing concern as the chair of that group. It's important. We all agreed locally as PSB members, it was important to have a political chair that leads locally on this activity as well, because that holds not just us as officers to account, but will also make those necessary political connections within the organisation and be held politically account to the council as well.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. But the reason I raised that, because if one of those people who are not attending are leading, then that can affect your performance.
That's what I'm thinking.
Sometimes, Councillor Evans, that can't be helped. You know, if someone's ill, you know, and they're leading on certain subjects, I would expect a grown-up conversation at that point as well, to either who's going to lead on that. Yeah. And it's, you know, I'm quite determined locally here, and I'm Councillor Richard Clark is in the same position as me, that this isn't a councillor. This isn't a Torfaen Council partnership plan. This is a partnership plan for Torfaen. So we should have leads for each of the activities from across the partnership. It doesn't always come down to the local authority to respond.
Can I make a comment as well? Because some of the stuff you've done has been extremely useful, but the problem's been getting it out there in a digestible form. I mean, the last one we did with you, I kind of go around saying, I don't know how the hell you read half of it, because you put a report out, and I said, Lyndon, I don't know how he does it, because you had, I think, getting on for 500, if not 1,000 links in it. It was an amazing bit of reading for a research student, but getting their conclusions and all the good information you had in there into digestible form that I could say to someone, go and have a look at that green and blue report. It's an amazing bit of work for an environment. Or the last report you did on where you kind of need like executive summaries, or you need somebody to take the bit of work you've done as a report and write it up so the public can look at it in plain speak. Because you've got a lot of really, really good work there. What I said about Ben Black, it was a populist, he used to work for Bronhaven. The stuff he does, getting it out there, sometimes you need to, it's kind of like a popularist report. This is what the PSP's done. We've made these conclusions. You almost like need a journal in there to do that for you. Because you've got a lot of really good findings, but they're not digestible unless they're councillors. And I got people I know would really write that up. We're not talking about, you know, extreme stuff. It's like Public Health Wales do the same thing as well, but they get the journals in and do it for you. It's the stuff you do. You need the next step over. From a scrutiny point of view, the stuff we see there as members, I say, well, go and have a look at that report. But not everybody's got the facility to plough through a report. I mean, the work you do is really, really good. And it's very interesting. I'm a bit of a wonk because I've studied this stuff and I know where to go. But I don't have the facility to go and see it either. That environmental report for an environmentalist is actually a really useful piece of work. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, there is an executive summary on the wellbeing plan, Chair, to pick things up.
It's not in Lyndon Puddy speak for the council, which we all understand. It needs to be something to get out there that you can contribute to the debate. I'll put it that way as an environmentalist.
I would suggest as that's come from yourself, Councillor Ashley, it might be something you'd want us to respond back into the Public Services Board with as part of this scrutiny process in terms of the consultation.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is you need to get it out there. It would be very valuable for you to do that because you put a heck of a lot of hours into this, and some of the stuff that Kate and Stephen talked about, a lot of input. Academics are good at this. They know when to get it out there because it pays for their research. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of stuff you've done there, a lot of hours in there. It might even kind of getting it out there pay for what you've done as PSPs, because you've done a lot of good work there. And we didn't have a lot we could say that we've done it because we know how to do it, but we kind and I think your scrutiny process on the region's going to do this. There's headlines in there that are good. The journalists won't know how to get in there either, some of it.
I think we need to blow our own trumpet a bit more.
Rosa's got it there. Rosa doing it at that level for you. Dave Williams is a good environmentalist. I work with Dave Williams on environmental matters, and we're both very passionate about it. I'm glad he's in there on that respect, because global climate change, he's a champion as well. That stuff that you got there needs to be out there. It's too valuable not to be.
We'll take that forward, Councillor Ashley.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say to you. I can't say it in any other way. Get it?
I would say though, Councillor Ashley, that
you're very modest in a lot of ways.
I'm literally the flag bearer for some of this stuff. All the hard work is done by Claire, Stephen, with Sarah and my other colleagues. They've done all the critical work.
I know they have. It's very good. It's brilliant, and that I can see that. We know that. That's what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
And right, thank you guys for doing that. That's I always enjoy these sessions, and I enjoy a funny word to use, but I know how passionate you are about it, and you put a lot of time and effort into it. And we know that. I think my colleagues will say that as well, won't you? Please, yeah, good. And there's a heck of a lot of work we know goes in there, and it's, you know, what can we say?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you know, we make our recommendations, and I'm sure members have it. Some people have been strangely quiet for them, but no, thank you. And you know, good luck with the regional thing. I just want to see how many annexes you get up to, but it's a lot of work. We know that. Good luck with that, and hope the effectiveness of what you do, I think, is what we're concerned about.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you all.
Thank you. Nice to be on call with you. Anyway, cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Just got to the end with a coughing fit, so apologies.
Everybody okay? You're all, my legs running.
I've got it, Rose, as well. I'm full of it myself.
Oh, no.
So take a deep breath. Anybody, Rebecca will read back to us what she's got. Anybody got any burning questions? I think we probably got most of what we need on this. But anybody got any burning questions? Rose, you got anything?
No, I think we've done that one to death.
What I said there is they need to get their message out succinctly, not in councillor speak. Are you agree with me?
I think that is a big issue for the council and obviously the PSB. So it is about blowing our own trumpet. We do a lot of things well, and there's a lot of work goes in from officers. So sometimes, you know, a thank you isn't enough. It needs to be highlighted in other places.
Yeah, proper recognition.
But do you get what I mean about it being written in plain speak so that people will understand? Because I'm forever telling people about it, and they say, "Oh, don't understand that." It needs a succinct summary written in what I call Ben Blackism, but you know, in language that the people out there can understand. Don't patronise them.
But what you've got to put down as well is regular updates. See where it's working.
And feedback both ways, really. So that
there's far too. Go on.
Sorry, and also some feedback from the consultations, which we should have available in early January.
No, that would be good. I actually went to the consultations up in Blyndhaven. They were well attended. There was a lot of interest within those consultations. And the people that were taking the consultations were very, very positive in the way that people were coming over. It was a positive. In fact, I had the consultations in the shop. The only downside to that was that it was very difficult to get online. And if there was more, the online situation, I think Janet and I talk about this a lot.
Yeah, I do.
Because there are areas within our communities that don't have the online presence and can't have that facility. And it's where you get those consultations out and how much consultation you can get out into the public without using online. I get online is the most important, valuable way that we correspond, but it's getting into places where people that don't have that facility can offer their opinions, and I think their opinions are valid because they're probably people that can't use the online facility.
What did you find? What did you find people concerned about? Was it environment? Was it anti-poverty issues?
There was a lot of
the
issues,
whole lot, was it?
very local issues that were very local.
The other thing I thought about, we got to make sure we don't lose our identity and our priorities,
right?
Particularly in
getting that one right?
Yeah, but Stephen, that could be the identity from the north of Torvine to the lower parts.
Right away through Torvine, you know,
because we are so different. You know, people. Janet and I would say that we're so different up the valley, up here, than we are further down. In many, you know, the social issues.
I lived there for about 15 to 20 years.
No, I know, and I tell you what, I've got a coat on. I haven't got any gloves on because it's that cold up here today. But we are, you know, there are lots of differences up here that we don't see further down the valley, including snow.
A lot of issues I had when I was involved with, especially with the forum, were the health issues.
Yeah.
Also, social housing.
Yeah. Massive.
So, right, the issues across the board, a lot of people, from what I understand, are very concerned about environment as well, because
So the younger people are, particularly Stuart, a lot of the younger people, a lot of the school children that I've spoken to, they are concerned about the environment. With the older people, are health. And you get the middle-aged group of people who are living with in-laws or family because they cannot get social housing. And also the social housing, which we had experienced with issues within that social housing of damp and mold.
Do is make sure
just one at a time, please.
Partners are working collaboratively and
collaboratively. Totally agree
with this.
Rebecca,
if they're not, then you're wasting your time.
This is good stuff, actually, because this is what I said about the communicating at a local. So, right, Nick?
I'm just saying that the social housing up here is very different. You've got people that are in social housing in Blaenavon that can't get out of Blaenavon. And then you've got the social issues around Blaenavon about how they shop and where they go and what they use. There are lots of social issues up here that are related to the transport
There's a good set of
schemes and everything else.
Thanks, Nick. Rose?
Yeah, I just wondered, I know they've consulted with TVA and the voluntary sector, that a lot of issues get taken to the Citizens Advice Bureau.
Yeah.
And as we are a contributor to the Citizens Advice Bureau, I just wondered whether or not that might be worth a consultation on things that obviously go wrong, and the Citizens Advice is usually a last resort after they've been to the housing, after they've been to every other a debt agency or what have you. So I just wondered whether or not we actually consult with the issues that are taken to the Citizens Advice Bureau.
Well, so that's Citizens Advice social policy set up. You've got their casework, and then you've got. So I used to work for Citizens Advice.
Yeah, but how do we learn from them? Because they get a lot of our residents' issues.
They can tell you anonymised social policy things for each area, funny enough. That's how they do it. Right,
Bex.
That'd
be a recommendation, Beck.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Right. So if I can just draw your attention then to the scrutiny activity.
Please do.
Which was that the PSB Scrutiny Committee is invited to consider the steps identified within the plan to address the three high-level objectives, and in particular to consider whether these steps are appropriate and whether there are any steps missing. So you've obviously very thoroughly gone through it today. Do you consider that the steps are appropriate and that they are sufficient? You're satisfied with those? Yeah.
You okay?
Yeah.
So then the only other point, in addition to the points you've raised, so you've raised the issues about a succinct report that is easily understandable and put out there to the public, and celebrating the success stories, regular updates.
Yeah,
face-to-face consultations. Obviously, that's a bit...
local consultation, regular consultation.
Yeah, obviously the consultation runs out at the end of the month.
Can you shut the door, please?
Somebody's
vacuum cleaning.
Sorry, members, just remember the meeting is still being webcast.
Sorry, I've got carpet coming in a minute.
Okay. And then the only other one, the point that I noted through your discussions with regards to evaluating it and the data, etc., and assessing all of that, is that the plan needs to be reactive to changes and different situations, and that the plan can be adapted in line with, you know, things that are going on, especially at the moment with the cost of living crisis, etc., so that it is adaptable. So I don't know whether you're happy with that as a recommendation as well.
That's brilliant.
And then, Councillor Seaborn, I'll add your question to the action sheet with regards to the citizens' advice and get some information on that for you.
Brilliant, thank you.
Can I just say, I think Rose did the issue about at what level we report back. Didn't you raise an issue there as well? Or are you happy with that?
What do you mean, Stuart? Repeat that.
The feeding back.
Feedback.
The feedback issue, which we always have a problem. We feedback at this level, but you obviously, you and David having to go at that level. Where do we get the action feedback? I think that's rather a crucial issue, to be honest.
Yeah, I think
we can look at that, Chair, as to how Councillor Seaborn and Councillor Williams perhaps can report back to this committee with updates.
I think Lyndon said that is to be planned. So when we go into the
we need to flag it up all the same.
Yeah.
Nick, did you want something?
Yeah, just going back on how quickly and adaptable. I think changes are happening so very, very quickly.
Good point, actually.
How quickly are changes are going to be adaptable to those changes? We're seeing things changing weekly, even monthly right now. How quickly will those changes happen? I know that's a hard question to say. You know, we're in December now, and we've got issues that are going on in December, but there's issues that are happening on more of a regular basis, and they are changing. They're changing weekly, aren't they? You know, the issues that are happening around us. You know, how quickly can we perform that?
Yeah. Okay.
Well, as Lyndon mentioned, this is obviously a 5-year plan, so it's not going to be short, sharp changes. They are going to look at longer patterns in their data, etc., and make adjustments on that basis.
But I do take the delivery plan of the borough and how the PSB fits in. We did raise that quite a few times. Is there any mileage in that, Rose? You're on mute again.
I think as this is a consultation process, Chair, I think there's more issues to come out once we set up the actual board. So
we put that, we expect a process with the regional and do it that way. We put that expectation in there, Bex. Can we do that?
And I'm sure, Chair, that Rose will spearhead the issues for Torvine, as well as Councillor David, as well as Councillor Williams.
Well, Councillor Williams is going to get global climate change while he's at it as well.
So I will formulate those recommendations and send them round to you as the committee for you to approve before they get sent on. Okay.
What I will say is thank you very much for something which is somewhat set in stone, but it wasn't stone so much as something you could chip away at.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you,
Bex. Nick, do you want to hang on 5 minutes, please?
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
If you just let the chair close the meeting, because we're still.
Can I close the meeting? I was about to say that, and will you all look after yourselves? I don't think any of us are particularly brilliant. Just take your cough mixtures and all the rest of it, and keep warm, Nick. Freezing.
We're used to it up here.
I know you are.